like the holy plan. Round about your table, children are the heritage of God. I am seeking first the kingdom of God, cause I am a preacher. I gotta pray just to make it today. A preacher. I am a preacher. Whether I am black or white, I am a preacher. Yes, I have to pray. I am a preacher. Yes, I have to pray. I am a preacher. Jesus got my heart. I am a preacher. I am blessed of the Lord, his hand is mighty upon me, and no weapon fashioned against me, they shall never prosper. I am blessed of the Lord, his hand is mighty upon me, and no weapon fashioned against me, they shall never prosper. Praying child, godly children behind, never defeated, always winning, believing in fear of God. Praying child, godly children behind, never defeated, always winning, believing in fear of God. Like the holy plan, round about your table, children are the heritage of God. I am seeking first the kingdom of God, cause I am a preacher. I gotta pray just to make it today. A preacher. I am a preacher. Whether I am black or white, I am a preacher. Yes, I have to pray. I am a preacher. Yes, I have to pray. I am a preacher. Jesus got my heart. I am a preacher. I am blessed of the Lord, his hand is mighty upon me, and no weapon fashioned against me, they shall never prosper. I am blessed of the Lord, his hand is mighty upon me, and no weapon fashioned against me, they shall never prosper. Praying child, godly children behind.
Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon. God bless you. Welcome, welcome, welcome to daily prayer for our children, wherever it is that you are joining us from. We like to welcome you in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. It's the last week, literally, kind of, because this time next week we're still in October, but I think you get my gist. It's the last full week of the month of October, and it's the beginning of a working week for many people. So whether is your week started Sunday or Monday, I hope it started very well and all has gone according to plan. And you know what I always say, if it didn't, as long as there is breath within you, there's hope for another day. So here we are, Monday, the 24th of October. We are fast coming to the end of October, like I said. So which means like literally next week, Tuesday. So we've got just over 7 days left to the end of our 6th year. So we are quite excited. So this time next week it will be the day before our anniversary starts. So it's a big deal for us. Very excited. Looking forward to rejoicing and giving thanks to God for the milestone, for the journey, for the support, for the prayers, for everything that we've managed to all accomplish this far. But this evening, I am not alone. I'm with one of my beloved sister again. Um, and we are looking into those very well needed areas of our children's growth and life that many of us rarely dig into, look into, unless it's actually knocking on our door. But I'm saying things don't need to knock on our door before we are rooted and grounded in all this information, because none of us know the kind of children that we're going to be blessed with. And just because you don't have that kind of children doesn't mean you shouldn't have the knowledge. I've always said, I've said it so many times, I'm going to say it again. When the Bible says get wisdom, get knowledge, get understanding in all you're getting, all those kind of things. And then Timothy was uh, told by Apostle Paul, he says, study to show yourself approved unto God. So, and to me, study means everything. Get knowledge everywhere that you can get knowledge. And Sister Falakemi has offered her knowledge, her expertise, and I think it's a double whammy that we get with Sister Falakemi, because she's also a woman of God. She's a pastor herself. They have their own ministry. Probably never even mentioned that, because I got that as a surprise as well, but don't worry. Anyway, but because the way we gist and we, just hang out, many people don't know. They do have a ministry. Maybe one day she's going to allow me to talk about that. So we'll talk on a ministry perspective. But most of the time so far, she's been coming on uh, experts, professional expertise in the areas of our children. And please don't forget, her area of specialization is teenage coaching for both teenagers and the parents. Don't forget that, because with what is going on and everything that's happening around us, we need expertise. We need people that know. And I don't believe in freebies. Neither do I believe in just taking people's time for granted. She might be my sister, yeah, but the Bible says whoever knows how to do good and doesn't do it is a sin. And the Bible also says a worker is worthy of their wages. So I am not an advocate for freebies. So if you're not prepared to, um, utilize her service to the full, including the financial terms, then please do not disturb her. Please, I don't appreciate that. Don't say you came from PCC, because that would be embarrassing us. Don't do that. But I'm sure she'll probably offer you some sort of discount and probably go beyond the call of duty. But I definitely do not advocate for freebies. Having said all that, that doesn't mean you cannot utilize, because many of us, once we hear money, and I experience that all the time, once money is involved, people run. And I think we're getting to that stage where you need to start making that decision. I know many of us are still struggling. We will still rather buy the Gucci and the luxurious holiday and all those kind of things to actually spend time in activities and all those kind of things that would put investment, it's an invest in the lives of our children that will help them to become the better person that they could possibly be in life. um and this is why people say I have a go at parents, but somebody's got to advocate for them. So I'm the town crier, so I'll keep advocating. And like I said, I'm so blessed that she's graciously accepted to come. And I'm sure people probably go for professional training for these kind of things, and it costs money. It definitely cost her money. And during the holidays, she and her husband were still, getting training themselves and doing courses and all those kind of things. So please, that's one of the reason, again, don't ask for freebies, okay? uh because her flight ticket to those courses as well, those they were not cheap. So I have an idea. Anyway, so I haven't said that, I'm going to bring Sister Folakemi Adedeji Ikunyiminu I'm going to bring her on board. As always, you can find her on Facebook. You can find her. Twitter is the only place I think I've never asked, but when she comes, we'll know. But you find her on YouTube, you find her on Facebook, and you definitely find her on Instagram, whether under her own individual name or the work, her profession that she does. You can find her on both those things. So everybody that is coming on board, I see my auntie and I see our Archbishop in the house as well, the only Archbishop that I know that I can fellowship with. I am so blessed. Hallelujah. So, everybody, without further ado, I give to you my beloved sister. Which one? What other title can I put there? Co-workers in the. She's shaking her head. Co-workers in the vineyard. She doesn't want me to say anything. That she's going like this. I don't know
It's
whether
enough.
I don't know whether any of you saw that. She was going like this frantically. Don't say anymore. Okay, so that's fine. So, Pastor, Mrs. Okay, here we are. How are you, ma?
Very well, thank you, ma. Good evening, ma.
As
Good evening,
always,
house.
house. Yes, so our house is here. They are ready
House,
to receive you. We are
Auntie
in for an
JJ,
exciting. Yes, that's my auntie. Oh.
Fumi.
Yes, so that's
I said
our
Auntie
Archbishop.
JJ.
She's not Auntie Fumio.
It's
We have to get her
it's
to change name. She's
ah
Archbishop.
okay.
Yes, a bishop with an ark. Everybody, the Bible said a good name is better than silver and
Mm,
gold,
mm,
and gold. And
mm.
here, everybody has title. We have commander, we have senator, we have honorable, we have
Okay,
all sort of. We have
okay.
senior pastors. So
I will
if
be
you want,
learning.
that's why I wanted to give you. I can add more to you.
Uh-uh. we've oh,
We have
we
a
bless
lot
God.
of yes, we, as you know, we're a family here,
Mm.
so and we love to fellowship and be in each other's presence and enjoy the presence of the Lord at the same time. So as always, I'm grateful for your time. I said we are in for an exciting time. In fact, your day today is marking so many things. So one, we've got a new prime minister, the third one in 3 months. So so it's a memorial day, it's a huge day, and it's also, I believe, the Hindus' a light festival.
Festival of Lights.
Light,
Yes,
yes.
yeah.
So today as well. So there's a lot, but we are going to be learning how we can be better parents with some of our children that have learning needs, especially in the area of autism and social communication. So I think it's, for me, it's exciting. I'm looking forward to this again. So please take over the reign and please enlighten us. And I will be asking for forgiveness in the back for all those mistakes as you are pointing them out that we have made that we shouldn't.
Yeah, well, hopefully we'll get somewhere. I don't think
Amen.
we're going to finish
Okay.
today, but
Okay.
I've tried to shorten it. But
Okay.
we'll see how far we
We'll
go.
see how
Yeah,
it goes. No
mm,
worries. We give
yeah,
God all the praise. So, like I said, I'm handing over to you. So please take over.
okay. Right, can we have our slides? Good evening, everybody. Once again, thank you for joining us. It's an honor to be here. A big thank you to Stafunke and Pastor for always honoring me by inviting me back. I'm happy to be here to share some of what I know. So today we're going to look at additional needs. Autism spectrum condition. Now, autism has gone by quite a few names in the last few years. It used to be called autistic spectrum disorder (ASD). Well, I think they removed the disorder to call it a condition. It used to be identified as ASD, no, as Asperger's, because
Yes.
autism is an umbrella.
Spectrum. Yeah.
There's a wide spectrum of needs, but everything now is under one umbrella, autism spectrum condition. And I think there's a social communication difficulty. The medical terms we will leave for the medical people. We just want to learn about what's going on. So, what is ASC? And you pardon me because for years it's been ASD. Now we're back to ASC. So I'll
Okay.
probably swing
In
in
between.
between the two,
That's
but
fine.
it's
You're
ASC.
forgiven. Don't
It's
worry.
ASC. So it's a developmental disability caused by differences in the brain. So we call, there's a triad that the doctors would use when they are looking at diagnosing. They're going to look at three things. They're going to look at social communication, they're going to look at interaction, and they're going to look at repetitive behavior or interest. So they call it a triad, but you know they look at those three things majorly to see if the children or adults these days fit into the umbrella somewhere. So let's go into our slides. So
Okay.
our first slide, okay, it's a developmental delay, and people call it neurodevelopmental because it is to do with how the brain has developed. So it's caused by differences in the brain. So it means that the person has a different way of understanding the world to us. Okay. It doesn't mean that they are flawed in any way. They just have a different way of understanding the world. And like we said, it's an umbrella, it's a continuum. So there's a wide spectrum. So you have people who have mild challenges, and you have people who have lots of challenges. You have people who are really very um, articulate, and and you have people who are non-verbal, all under this umbrella. And we always say that where everybody's on the spectrum somewhere or the other. We all have our own quirkiness. We all have our own differences that that make us stand out. So it's a continuum. So severity can be mild, from mild to really challenging, getting on with everyday life. And it's an invisible difficulty. I read something yesterday, a few days ago, and it made me reflect again on how invisible this 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 um this spectrum is. One lady was writing on Facebook. She has a daughter that has ASC, and she lives in America. So she said she went to Target, and her daughter, her 12-year-old, I think, or 8-year-old, was sitting in the trolley, and one older man just kind of smiled at the girl and said, "Oh, aren't you too big for that?" She said she smiled, and of course the girl kind of giggled, and they went away. And what am I bringing out of this? The girl is non-verbal, and the
Mm.
only way that mother could get through her shopping
Mm.
was
To put
to
her in the
put
trolley.
her in the trolley,
Mm.
so that the she won't get overwhelmed by what's going on. So it for me, it reinforced the fact that this thing, you can't see it in the face.
Mm. Mm.
You look at the girl, you think, "Oh, you're a big girl, what are you doing in
Yes.
the trolley?"
Mm. Mm.
So when we draw conclusions, when we make assumptions, these are the
Mm.
things we need to think about. Like, there might be something going on there, even though this child looks like everything is fine. So it's actually invisible with some people. You would notice, and for some people, you until you actually interact with them, you wouldn't know,
Mm.
because they might speak to you, clearly and everything, but then after a while, you start thinking, okay, maybe there's something going on. So
Mm.
they might behave in ways that are different to us. Um, they might have advanced conversation skills and use really big vocabulary and
Mm.
interesting language. And then when you dig deep, you realize sometimes they don't even know what they're talking about.
About, yeah.
They've just learned it. So
Mm.
it's so invisible. So, and most people with ASC need a lot of help with everyday life, because just imagine, you can understand me as I'm speaking to you.
Mm.
Just imagine somebody who's standing there and who's thinking, are they speaking Chinese? What are they talking about? Like,
Mm.
what I'm saying, what you and I are saying that makes sense. It's just going over their head.
Mm.
So that they a lot of them need a lot of help through the day and through life. Okay, let's move on.
Okay.
I've started talking.
That's fine. We need understanding.
Next slide, please. Okay, so prevalence. It occurs in every race, every ethnic group, every socioeconomic group. It's not a rich man's issue, it's not a poor man's issue. It is everywhere. It it cuts across races. And according to research, it's 5 times more common in boys than in girls. And I'd
Wow.
put a caveat, it's really, really difficult to diagnose in girls,
Really?
because of the way we
Our
social
chemical build up.
conditioning.
Oh, okay, okay.
No, social
The
conditioning.
conditioning.
Girls
Okay.
girls pick up social cues,
Very
and
quickly.
they do what we call masking.
Yeah.
So for girls, they don't it doesn't really come out until like they're in secondary school,
Wow.
and they've held it together for so
So
long,
long.
and then they can't.
Okay.
So it's easier to see in boys than in girls. Well, I don't know. Yeah, but where I work with my local council on the support line, and we're getting a lot of girls coming through in secondary school who are refusing school, who are melting down, and all of that. And when you dig deep, eventually you will find that there's a social communication difficulty that the girl has. She's gone through school,
Mm, mm.
managing, and then she can't manage anymore.
More.
So, and usually about 38% of learners that have ASC would have another difficulty. We call it
Okay.
comorbidity. So they can probably have ADHD, they can probably have dyslexia, or you know s- other things.
Mm,
They might
mm.
have, there's so we call it there's a they don't usually stand alone, this specific learning difficulties. So usually with autism, the child might have some other, diagnosis. Okay, and of course, we would have seen that it manifests in worrisome behaviors like emotional outbursts. The child injuring themselves, the child, having a meltdown, or they might appear to have, self-soothing mechanisms. They're spinning, they're jumping, they're doing things like that, trying to, what we call it, trying to center, trying to, they still the overwhelm, calm the overwhelm that they're going through. Okay, so that's a general overview of what
Mm.
it is. We've seen the manifestation in different ways in different children.
Children.
Okay, what causes autism? I think that's our next slide. It's not caused by family dynamics. It's not caused by poor parenting or anything the parent did. It results from an unusual pattern of brain development. Now, there are a lot of theories about, it's got something to do with BCG,
Yeah.
or it's got
Jab.
something to do with the jab,
Mm,
it's got something
mm.
to do with this. But there's no scientific proof, unless it's not being shared, that this is true. Because if you go to my village, I'm pretty sure you can fish out a
One or two.
child, one or two children who
Maybe.
are on the spectrum.
Maybe.
Maybe, yes, maybe,
Yeah.
yeah.
Probably a lot
So
higher than what you're
a
saying
lot,
anyway.
exactly.
Mm,
So
mm.
so there's a lot of theories, but this is what science says. It's caused by an unusual pattern of brain development, and usually they would say there's a higher there's a higher chance of having another child who has ASC if you have one, and sometimes it runs in families. Okay, so yeah, um, some of them have a genetic condition associated with their ASC, but it is a spectrum. It is pretty wide, and
It's
that
very wide.
people are still studying it. So we still
Mm.
have a lot to learn about the causes of ASC. Right, let's move on.
Okay.
like we said, they can be high functioning and have only mild challenges that, it's only after a while you start thinking, that person is odd. And you and I will remember that, we knew people in school that we thought, oh, that person is really odd.
Mm.
But they might probably be on the spectrum. That's why there are a lot of adults, especially of ethnic minority, who are getting diagnosed
Mm.
as adults
Mm.
because they have socially, we kind of managed to get through, but they were always the odd one. People you would look at them like, oh, that guy is quite kind of quirky, it's kind of odd.
Mm.
They were properly autistic and managing through life. So that is important to remember that it's not it's I've lost my train of thought. What's on that slide? That people is
Yeah.
with Yeah, let's have it. Okay, right. So some might have mild challenges. That's where I was.
Mm.
Some might have really severe symptoms,
Mm-hmm.
impaired spoken language. They might have a lot of medical issues. So it's just it's just a wide spectrum. So it's just something we look out for, and not start looking at people oddly and saying make your child behave. You can't you can't do it. You just learn how to help them, support them to cope with life. Right, let's move on.
Okay.
Okay, so the difficulties. Now, before I move to the difficulties, let me just say some things. It's important to realize that if you know one person with autism, you know one person with autism. As in, you cannot generalize from that
Oh,
one
I
person
was
you
just
know.
going to say, could you decode, please?
So if you know one person with autism, you know one person with autism. It's not you can't generalize and say, oh, so and so does that, so and so does this. No.
Mm.
You
Mm.
just you just know that person, and you're learning to help them. And we need to remember that we they can't meet us halfway.
One glove does not fit all.
Yes, one glove does not fit us. And we need to remember the way their brain is structured, they can't meet us halfway. We are the one that need to make the
Mm.
adjustments to
Okay.
support them.
Mm.
Okay? To be
Okay.
able to see things from their point of view.
View.
And we'll
Okay.
talk about it when we start looking at the characteristics. Okay,
Okay.
let's move on.
Okay. So the adjustment has to come from our
It has
side,
to come from
not
us
from them.
to
Okay.
support them. So, social difficulties, I think, is the first one. Social interaction. I think we've skipped a slide.
Okay, let me go back.
Social difficulties. So like I was talking about, people that you think, oh, they're odd, they're loners, they don't have friends, they prefer to be alone. And they can't interpret your non-verbal cues. When we were growing up, your mom will wink at you, she
Mm.
will call your name,
Mm-hmm.
and she doesn't need to say any other thing.
Mm-hmm.
You get it.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sure you remember some people that didn't get it,
Many.
and they got the brunt.
Mm-hmm.
They got
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. They
They
did.
got they
Mm.
got whipped into.
Especially if it's not your child, so you don't even know them that well.
Absolutely,
So
absolutely.
so we'll say they're stubborn. We say they're
Hmm.
rude. They're
Yeah,
arrogant.
yeah.
No home training. All those kind of
Those
things.
kind of things. He can't even greet. Didn't you see me? And all of that. So poor eye contact. I mean, okay, we are all probably good at poor eye contact because we were told not to look in the adult's
Yes.
face.
Yes.
So how many of us do you think are actually on the spectrum?
Wow.
Because we actually have poor eye contact anyway. So, and they seem aloof. They seem like, unfriendly
Mm.
because they're loners and they're awkward. They'll crack jokes and you think, oh, what kind of joke is that?
Mm.
So difficulties with making friends, you know, finding it hard to take turns when playing games, all those social things that we just we learn and we do them. So they get the brunt of, of everybody's tongue, or everybody's attitude, because they're just not doing those things.
Mm.
And sometimes they will even compare them. See the junior sister,
Mm. Mm.
what's wrong with him? Why is
Mm.
it behave? Why is
Mm.
it not listening?
Mm.
And we just heap the blame on the child, not realizing that, there are social difficulties. They are the ones they're so rigid, they can't see things from your point of view. It's a social difficulty. You're trying to explain to them, and they're not having it,
Mm.
because they can't see it from your perspective. So social difficulties is one of the characteristics. Next one, communication. I think if you have difficulties relating to people, of course, it actually starts from, the communication. It will be obvious.
Mm.
So if you make a joke, if you use sarcasm, if you use idioms,
It's lost.
just completely, it goes over their head. So everybody's laughing, and this person is just looking at you like, what's going on?
Mm.
Okay. They prefer facts to and logic, instead of all the flowery story. Mm-mm. Tell
Straight to the
me
point.
the straight to the point. A, B, C, D. That makes sense to them. When you now say, oh, and then we went left, and then we went right, and then and she sat up, and they're just like lost. They can't follow your trail of thought. And there's something we call, oh, I've lost it now. I'll remember and I'll tell you. Things that we take for granted, actually. When it comes back to me,
Okay.
I'll explain it. So it's finding it hard to understand facial expressions, your tone of voice, your gestures, and and we find that with the younger children, they're actually fascinated by the play of emotions on our faces.
Mm.
So sometimes they'll say, this child, why does it like annoying people? Actually, he just wants to see the reaction on your face, how the emotions, because they're not emotional. They are just, their brain doesn't
That's
work
it.
the way
Yeah.
ours work. So when you're angry, you don't realize how your face changes and how the emotions play across your face. They're fascinated. So when the child comes to you and he's looking in your face like this, he's trying to, like,
Understand what you
trying
go.
to, what's going on?
Yeah.
Like, this person, it fascinates them. And you specifically have to teach them about emotions, and how to relate and all of that. We'll talk about that. So communication problems with language, they have problems with processing verbal information. So when you talk, you have lost them.
Mm.
So information has to be, bite size. It has to be bit by bit, and they have a difficulty in focusing on the speaker. So you say, "Oh, the child is not paying attention." We find that in class they might be looking elsewhere, but they're actually listening. That's their way of,
Mm.
trying to cope with the environment and to focus on what you're saying. So, but whereas in class, a lot of teachers will say, "Look at me," they find it difficult to look at you. And you would think, oh, is this child learning anything? So, and then when you say things to them, of course they take things literally. So anybody who doesn't understand jokes, if you say, oh, you now try sarcasm on them, they and so if you say to them, oh, I'm not your friend anymore, they'll believe you, because that's what you said. So they won't understand the undertone of, I'm not very happy with you, or I'm joking with you.
Mm.
It wouldn't make sense to them. They would just, and that can spiral into other things. They can now say, oh, so and so say he's not my friend, because usually once they like one person, they will stick with the person.
That's it.
They will stick with the person. Even sometimes it becomes a problem, because they become fixated with that
Mm.
person,
Mm.
and no other person can play with them, those sort of
Mm.
things. So
Mm.
yeah, so they've been made differently. So that's receptive language, understanding what you're saying. You can't say too much, because they won't be able to cope with it. You have to keep your language simple, short, and
Precise.
straight, precise, to the point. And in the non-verbal, in the expressive language, they can be repetitive, so that those of them who have challenges with speaking and language might be repeating what you say. We call it echolalia. So they would repeat what you say beautifully, but they won't speak and they won't say any other thing. So you can see that it's really wide. So problems with communication, some of them might have a funny tone. You think, why does this speak like that? We have children in England here who speak like Americans. They just adopt, a
Mm-hmm.
very different accent.
Mm.
It's just very interesting. So, and with communication, of course, problems with initiation. They either will come and talk to you, inappropriately, or they would just not come
Come
to
at
you
all.
and
Yeah.
initiate communication. So yeah, communication is a big one.
Mm.
Next slide. Language and communication. Okay. Difficulty with processing verbal information. We've talked about that. Difficulty with extracting relevant details. So if you give them too much, they can't tell you which is the important part of the conversation. Is it for me to get ready for school, or for me to remember to remove my bag from the car when I get to school? So if I give them all those information, it's just going to get lost somewhere. And of course, difficulty with focusing on the speaker, problems with initiation. Right, let's move on. Right, rigidity. And this becomes obvious, especially with those ones who, when you look at them, you can't see that there's anything wrong or anything going on. The need for sameness and predictability, the struggle with change. The struggle with change. And I was in on a training this morning, and I was saying, we use visual timetables, what we call visual timetables in school in England. Now those children will come into class, and they would, if it's a Wednesday, for instance, and it's a PE day, they will just go straight and say, PE, no PE today, no PE today, because their brains, they are very smart.
Routine.
They remember the routine, they remember the days of the week. In fact, I used to have a child who was echolalic. He only repeated what you said. But he would sit with me. I'm sure I've said it before on this platform. He would sit with me and do my register from number 1 to 25. Like, he would sit next to me. Good morning, Luke. Good morning, Adam. Good morning. And he would do it alphabetically. Even me, that I was doing it, I couldn't do it off head. So that was our way of settling into class in those days. I'm sure he must be like over 20 now. He'd sit next to me, and that was the way of settling him into class. And he would do my register without looking at it. Now, you want to tell me that's an amazing difference. Like, he would remember the 25 children by order, in order. So, but every other thing might be a challenge. So when it comes to, for sameness, that's how I got here. So if it's PE day,
Mm-hmm.
and I haven't put PE there, there's a problem. Now imagine that if it's the day they go swimming, or it's
Mm.
the day they do something they like,
Mm.
they now suddenly come and it's not there, and
Mm.
you haven't pre-warned them that, tomorrow, there's no swimming tomorrow, and you
Mm-hmm.
have to keep repeating it so that it will register in their
Mm-hmm.
brain.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, when they come and there's disruption in the routine, there can be a meltdown.
Mm.
So there's that rigidity, because it helps them to feel safe.
Mm.
We'll talk about that when we get to, so the need for sameness, the need for routine. It's really important for them. And then they also have, compulsive behaviors. So um I used to have a student, and he likes to switch the lights on and off. So he'll play with the switch because he likes the sound. If he walks past the radiator, he has to tap it 3 times. Just quirks, things like
Mm.
that.
Mm.
That they just get, once they
Mm.
start doing it, it becomes part of their routine. And
Mm.
it can be annoying for some people, because they think, what's wrong with this child? Why are they doing that? So need for routine, need obsessive thoughts. Sometimes they just get into this, maybe they watched something on the TV, and
Mm-hmm.
it's something maybe it's about death, or about somebody killing somebody, or about somebody, it can go. They might not even say anything that day. It might be weeks down the line, they'll start talking about it. Even you would have forgotten. And you start wondering, what are they talking about? Then they get fixated with it and
Mm.
start talking about it. I remember some children who would be so fixated on death. They'll say, oh, talking about, oh, my daddy died. And they will be telling you like matter of fact, because they don't even understand
Emotion
the
is not.
emotional side
Mm.
of it. But
Mm.
they're so fascinated by, oh, and he's not coming back, and he's not, they will just be telling you those things. It becomes an obsession, and then they'll start talking about, oh, well, maybe it's an oroba, it's somebody. It's the way their mind works, and it's quite interesting. So they get obsessive about things because of the rigidity and all of that. Let's move on to our slides.
Okay.
Right. So next slide, strict routines. Sensory. Okay. They can be very sensitive to sounds, to smells, to touch, to pain, to light, the things we take for granted. Clothes, shoes, you can't imagine how heartrending it is when you change a child's shoes. You buy new, brand new shoes, good shoes for a child, and they can't even wear it because it is uncomfortable for them. You can't, because they're so sensory. Some of them are so sensory that even the label
On their clothes.
on their clothes
Mm.
can be a hindrance. And I can testify, as I got older, I've had to start removing the tags on my clothes, because somehow my skin has got really sensitive to the tag rubbing. And every time I remove a tag from from a dress or a top, I think about these children, how uncomfortable
That
it
must
could
feel.
have been making them feel. Little things like seams that on the on underneath our clothes, that rub against our skin and is
Mm.
nothing to us.
Mm.
Ah, hmm. You don't want to imagine how uncomfortable it can make them, because their senses are so they're so sensitive. They're so sensitive to sensations. So it could be noise. So, like I always say, when you see a child having a meltdown, especially if they're on the spectrum, it's overwhelmed from the noise. They can hear the noises, they can
You
hear
can't.
things
Yeah.
you can't hear. I
Mm.
remember a child, the I don't know what they call it. The IT server box or something was
Oh
in
yeah,
our room.
that long thing, the processors, the CPU.
The processors they put on the
Yeah.
wall.
Yeah.
Do you know, even if the whole room if we had like 20 people in the room talking and all of that, he'd just stand by that processor. Most of the time I can't hear it,
But he can.
but he could. So they can the senses are so sensitive, and sometimes it can lead to overwhelm. So tactile defensiveness. So you try and hold a child, and
They don't want it.
they don't want it, because it's just it just doesn't feel right to them.
Mm. Mm.
So you touch some of them, they have a meltdown.
Mm.
So sensory overload, and they can have a high pain threshold. They get hurt, and they just keep
Continue.
going because of the way their senses are structured. So overreactivity, underreactivity. Sometimes we will say it's cold, put your coat on. They won't even feel cold. And sometimes it's hot, take your jumper off. You can't get them to do it, because they're not feeling hot, because of the way the senses are being. So yeah, so all of those sensitivities, they come into play when we look at people with ASC. Next slide.
Mm.
So attention, focus, interests. Okay, they can over focus on details. like that person listening to the sound, they can over focus on one tiny speck
Mm.
and it becomes an issue,
Mm.
especially if it's different. So you can imagine you trying that person trying to learn or trying to, make sense of socks.
Mm.
The child comes into class and he can't sit still because the socks he's wearing is making him uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
That's one that you and I can ignore. It can be the beginning and end of that day because that detail will not allow them to focus on anything else. So it's what you wouldn't even take as important, they will focus on it. And when they are focusing on, one particular thing, then they can't see the overall picture. So bring that back into the classroom, bring that back into the home. You know, we're getting up early so that we can get ready for school and be in school on time. They don't see that picture of getting to school on time. They are fixating on the fact that you've woken me up. Why have you woken me up? I don't want to get up. So they can't pick out what's relevant from what's not relevant. Everything just sometimes muddles together. Now remember that this depends on where they are on the spectrum as well. Okay, some will find it easier, some will find it more difficult. And they would now choose interests, focus. They'll focus on interests. I remember I had a child in my class who liked Thomas the Tank Engine. And I actually bought the whole set of those books, and it was his treat. So that when he's done his work, I can say you can have a Thomas book. So they will develop specific interests. Some of them, oh, they can tell you about all the galaxies, they can name all the dinosaurs. It just depends on what they're interested in. Some of
Mm.
them it's cars. I remember a child we had, he would not forget anything. Like then I used to drive a Skoda. And when I met him, it was in year two. In year six, he'll still say to me, "Oh, do you still drive your Skoda?" As in 4 years later. And he'd remember things like, "Oh, do you still have a pressure pot?" Because we talked about it. So you just imagine the where he's interested. How many children will remember? And he'd come round the room and say, "Oh, you drive a Skoda, you drive a Vauxhall, you drive a blah blah blah." He'll look at your key and tell you what kind of car you drive if you have your keys. Well, or if you tell him, "I drive this," he won't forget. So they focus, they have interests and they focus on those interests. So if it's Lego, oh, so sometimes you go to people's houses and their child has different types of Lego. It's their way of, coping,
Communicating. Yeah.
communicating, coping with, whatever is going on around them. Sometimes it's trains, sometimes it's cars, and they're fascinated by all kinds of things like the washing machine.
Mm.
We had a child who would, he would run off out
Stand.
of the room and
Mm.
then he'd just go and sit in front of the
Washing
washing
machine.
machine in the
Yeah.
kitchen,
Yeah.
just watching it spin. So those sort of things. So yeah, they'll develop a particular interest and they would stick to it. Next one, organization. Okay, so problems with managing too many materials. when when the needs are actually really severe, we use what we call the teach structure in school. So it's always first this, then next. So we signify the end of tasks clearly. So this is what we're doing, and then there's a box that says finished. We put it in the finished box so that they can start relating, the structure to,
Mm-hmm.
we do our work, we put it in the finished box. So we're teaching them things that most children will pick up instinctively, put the structure in place. So they have problems with too many materials, difficulties with sequencing work. So telling a story in order, remembering how things go, especially if they now have, a co-occurring with dyslexia or things like that. or
Mm.
working memory problem.
Mm.
So difficulty with multitasking, doing too many different things. It's got to be one. You remember they always focus on the detail,
Mhm.
on one thing. So
Mhm.
problems with seeing a task through once they've lost interest. So when you see a child who flits from one thing to the other, they'll pick up this toy, leave it there, and watch TV, and then drink water and put the cup down. Their attention. So that one, especially if it's co-occurring with ADHD, so it can be quite a myriad of too many materials is difficult. So when they're overstimulated, when there's too much noise, too much light, too much whatever, they can't focus, and it's difficult for them to organize themselves. So we need to, when we start thinking about all these challenges, it's now how to support them. That's the next point of call. What's our next slide? Right, so it's the support. How are we doing for time?
Sis, go on.
Okay. So, supporting, one thing we must remember is that we're dealing with an individual, we're dealing with a human being. They have thoughts, they have feelings, they have talents, they have strengths, just like the rest of us. They're just different. And we need to remember that and to respect it. So, when we're dealing with them, we need to remember that this child is different, this adult is different, but that doesn't make them less human than I am. It doesn't make them less important than I am. It doesn't make them irrelevant because they're learning differently to me. That's that we need to remember that. And if we do anything, if I forget, I'll say this now because I remember. Please, even if the child is non-verbal. Not speaking does not mean not having anything to say, and I'll explain that. They might have something to say, but they won't be able to say it to you. But whatever you do, please don't speak disrespectfully of the child or adult in their presence simply because they're non-verbal.
Mm.
Don't do it because they can hear you, even if they're not speaking.
Mm.
They can hear you and they can sense it, even if they can't hear you. Most of the time, they can hear you, they understand. They just don't know how to put the words together. So let's treat these children the same way we'll treat every other children. They have thoughts, they have feelings, they have emotions. They just don't know how to express them. And that's why we're there as the adult and as the supporting other, to be there for them. So, how do we support them? Let's move on. Okay. They deserve the same level of love, respect, because everyday activities can be challenging. It can cause a lot of stress and anxiety for them. We can't just sit there and think, is it not just this thing? For them, it's not just that one. Sometimes a pencil can cause a meltdown. They're used to using this pencil. Somebody else takes it. They don't have the social understanding until they get better with support. They don't have that understanding. They're fixated on that one. So, and it can cause them a lot of anxiety. So that this child that wants a particular person is not getting it, you want them to sit down and write, or you want them to focus on something else, it won't happen. And it's not that the child is spoiled. No, it's not. So little things can cause anxiety, it can cause stress, it can cause a lot of disruption, and it's not bad behavior. I can see that comment. I know of 5 of them, and they all have their individual things that they love so much, and they're extremely good at them. Absolutely. In whatever it is they like, they're usually very good at it. If they like drawing, they would be really good at drawing. If they like dinosaurs, I used to know a child. He would tell me the names of some of the dinosaurs. I couldn't even pronounce their names. Hmm? He will say Diplo, whatever. Blah. He said that one. If sometimes I'll say the wrong name, he say, "No, miss, that's not a triceratops." Ah, some of them I've just been almost biting my tongue, but that's the uniqueness. That's the positive side of it. So how do we support them?
Mm.
Thank you for that,
Archbishop.
Archbishop.
The
I
bishop with
got
an
it right.
arc.
I got it right. So, how do we support them? Let's move on.
Okay.
Yeah, structure. I think structure is, we need structure. Just like, a prosthetic device that supports, that's what structure is like for them. It supports them to feel confident and complete, knowing that there's predictability. So even at home, you would find that some many parents will have the structure. They will have a visual reminder of what the structure of the day is. There's
Mm.
an understanding. When I don't change my dates, when I don't change the timetable on the board, they're quick to. In fact, after a while, some of them were the ones that would come in the morning and help me do my timetable because they know what the structure is. So you can imagine somebody who is they get their comfort, they get their peace, they get their from all this of things being in a certain way, and then we change it. It sets them off. So usually, if there's going to be a change, we pre-warn them. We say, look, tomorrow, if I'm not going to be in class, I will say, look, I'm not in class tomorrow. So and so will be there. And depending on the severity, some of the children you can just tell them. Some of the children you have to show them a picture. And we do what we call transition passports when they're moving class. So you would take pictures of their new class. They'll go and see the new class, take pictures of their new teachers and new adults so that they can start getting familiar.
Familiarizing.
You can't just change things for some of them because their brains don't work like that. So we have to put the structure in place to support them. Otherwise, things are going to fall apart. Things are going to fall apart if the structure is not right. Sometimes the structure is even right. They will be fine, they'll settle, and all of a sudden, you know, they'll start wobbling because you can imagine somebody, he spent a whole year in a particular structure. He's
Mm.
moved into a new class.
Mm-hmm.
They're definitely going to be wobbles because after a while, they will go back into their old self and think, oh, this is different. So the relationship is very important. Building a relationship with the children is very, very important. Once they know that you're a safe space for them,
Mm.
then things will start building. And we don't have to be an expert. I was telling the teachers I was speaking to this morning that when I started teaching when I was teaching in Nigeria before I moved away from Nigeria, special needs, nobody talked about special needs.
No.
You just had those children in your class and you had to deal with, and I was working in a top school. So when the child of the board chairman is in your class and the child has SCN, eh? And you have to teach that child, and the child has to do SAT.
And your salary depends on it.
So I found out later on, teaching in the UK, that I instinctively, by the grace of God and by the interest in that child, made the adjustments that helped him to learn. So it's not about any specialized knowledge. It's
Mm.
about wanting to do the best for
Do.
that child.
Mm. Mm.
And God has given us all that grace. We do it for our children. If you have 10 children, you don't treat them exactly the same. As in you know each child's
Individually.
individuality, their individuality, you know where the boundaries are for their
Personalities,
personalities,
likes,
their strengths, their
dislikes. Yeah.
weaknesses, what they like, and all of that. It's
Mm.
the same thing.
Mm.
We just make those adjustments
We need to.
when we are patient enough. Okay, so structure, vital. vital, vital. It's very important. I can't overemphasize that. Okay, let's move on. So next slide. So what sort of structures do we need? Organizers, visual support, clear indication of passage of time. It's nearly time to finish playing. We set the timer, they can see it. But the timer is counting down. I need to finish. That's why sometimes when you suddenly say, "Oh, it's time to go," we see it in the park. The mother says to the child, "It's time to go," and the child has
Meltdown.
a meltdown. So sometimes you look at it and think, "Oh, what a spoiled child." They're probably on the spectrum. So we pre-warn them. You pre-warn them. We have 5 minutes. So they start readjusting and thinking, okay, it's nearly time to go, depending on how rigid they are. So clear indicators of the passage of time, clear indicators of when things are finished. It's finished now, done, and we put it away, and support for understanding a social environment. So things that most children will pick up. We will have to explicitly teach. We teach please, we teach thank you, we teach requesting.
Mm.
We teach it specifically, and thankfully, those of us that live in the developed nations, we have access to all kinds of support for them. Speech and language therapy is vital for children on the spectrum because it helps them develop their vocabulary. It helps them develop, their expressions and all of that. So structure is important. Let's move on.
Okay.
Communication. With autism, communication is different. I'm sure you'd have picked that up since we started
Mm.
talking.
Mm. Mm.
So, talking our words are not automatically tied to communication. You would agree because that's I explained that earlier.
You
That
did.
they will speak beautifully, but so you can imagine they are saying it. It doesn't make sense to you. When you say it to them, how is it going to make sense? Yes, because they are repeating what they've learned many times. And you will find that if they have a particular kind of programs they like watching, they can learn words from the program and say it beautifully, and you think they're talking. So speaking like that is basically not communication. They're just repeating what they've said. So saying nothing is not the same as I've already explained that.
Mm.
So if they're not talking, doesn't mean they don't have something to say. Some of them would have to use um, PECS, picture exchange communication system, because they can't, because they're not speaking. So the speech and language therapies will set up, a picture exchange system for them, so they can tell you what they want, they can tell you how they feel, and all of that. Even sometimes those who speak
Mm.
sometimes can't find the words, and they can still use pictures as guide, so that they're not lost in that mire of communication. So we take communication for granted.
We do.
I remember what I wanted to say now. Communication requires what we call the theory of mind. And what does theory of mind mean? That I can kind of understand your mind, about where you're coming from. It's instinctive, but for
Mm-hmm.
them, they don't get that theory of mind. I can kind of think about, oh, what's her motive for saying what she's saying.
Mm-hmm.
i
Mm-hmm.
can I can read the expression on her face. I
Mm.
can read the tone in her
Mm-hmm.
voice.
Mm-hmm.
I can
Mm-hmm.
kind of see where she's coming from. That's the kind of understanding behind the theory of mind, but they can't.
Yeah.
So communication is definitely not going to be
Fluid.
easy or
No.
fluid or
No.
straightforward.
Mm.
Yeah. So communication is difficult. There's so much abstract in our communication. We just do it. We don't think about it.
Mm.
But for them,
It's a
it's not going to
process.
make sense. They
Mm.
need to understand the process. They need to understand where you're coming from. Okay. And but communication, remember, is a social exchange. and this is a social communication difficulty. ASC has and people with ASC find it difficult. That social communication is one of the triads, being able to communicate appropriately and effectively. So communication is a big one, and speech therapy is vital. It's important to help them. And communication requires so many things. Social awareness. I'm reading your body language.
Mm.
I can see that you don't want me to talk to you. But they won't, because they can't read your body language. They can't read your facial expression. They're just fascinated by the fact that there's a play of emotion across your face. What's going on? Theory of mind. They don't get it. Okay? So thinking about those things when we communicate, we can see how much support a person living with ASC would need, even though they don't look like they need it.
Mm.
Right, let's look at our next slide.
Okay.
Okay, so I've talked about that. Imagine body language is 55% of communication, tone of voice 38%, then the words 7%. So they're lost in that jungle
Mm.
because they don't understand your body language. They don't
Mm.
know what your tone of voice means.
Mm.
Okay, so how are the words going to make a difference?
Mm.
And we just do this. We just cotton onto it because of the way we have been wired, and they are not wired the
Mm.
same way. So, and when we communicate, we use, like me now, I'm always using my hands,
We all do that.
gestures, sounds. So imagine somebody, he just sits there and thinks, why is she doing that? Why are her hands all over the place?
Mm.
You understand that that's the way I talk, that's the way I speak, but they don't. So all of those things. And then we also need to think about why we communicate. We communicate, we to accept, to reject, to refuse, to agree.
Mm.
And we do those things, but they don't get it. To express our feelings, all of this, they have to be taught specifically. This is how to say no. This is how to speak to me. This is how to gain your attention of your teacher. You don't go up and look in their face. Don't
Mm.
touch them. The social awareness. We need to teach all of that specifically. Let's move on to our next slide. So let's think about receptive communication. What are they understanding? And how much we've looked at how much our communication is non-verbal.
Mm.
So the verbal takes very little. And then we concentrate on the verbal and we
Mm.
keep repeating the instruction, whereas
Mm.
the majority of our communication is non-verbal.
Mm.
It's non-verbal, and they can't read your non-verbal cues. Okay. And then we need to think about how much can they say? How much can they express? What's their verbal ability? What are the non-verbal parts of the expressive language, even when we're talking to them? So, very important that we think about those things when we communicate with learners with ASC. Next slide. Processing time. Okay. Whichever way we're communicating, whether we're using pictures, whether we're using, our words, we must give them processing time to think. Processing time that is longer than than the usual. Okay, because people like me, I used to be quite like but I liked things done. You actually have to stop and let them think. For those of them who are a bit more verbal, sometimes when you ask them a question, they can come back to you and say, I'm thinking.
Mm.
And they're actually thinking, sorting out the information in their head. So when you speak to a child and you don't get an immediate response, it's not like they're ignoring you. They're probably trying to find a way to respond, or they're probably trying to understand what you've asked, before they can respond. So we need to give them processing time, remembering that a lot of what our communication is non-verbal. So they do need the processing time to think through what we are saying
Mm.
so that we can support them appropriately. Next slide. I think we've done really well tonight. Behavior. We need to see the world through the lens of autism. What is the function of the behavior we're seeing? Behavior in any human being is communication. There's a function behind that behavior. So if the child is upset, what's upsetting them? If the child is inattentive, what's distracting them? What's going on? So getting to the root of what the behavior is trying to communicate is important. Let's move on. So let's look at this way. They called it the iceberg analogy. So the behavior we see,
Are you trying to tell me this is supposed to be an iceberg?
sis, just leave that one. You are the artist. So
Sorry, I
that
was pulling your legs.
I know. I
I
know.
couldn't resist. Sorry,
Yeah.
go on.
I know that I have another one somewhere, but I couldn't fish it out.
Idea
So
is need.
what we see is the meltdown, is the screaming, is the yelling, is the hitting, is the refusal. What's underneath? What's on those that we see? Problems relating to others. That he doesn't know what to say to you, doesn't know how to say to you. Problems with language and communication. They don't know how to approach you. They don't understand. Problems with change, you
Mm,
know, problems with sensory difficulties. They might not like this my light, for instance. It might
mm,
be giving them, a headache. It might be disturbing them. And then it's an issue. Problems with organization, problems with, we call something generalization, applying what they know
mm,
into a
mm,
different context.
mm-hmm,
So if somebody's sitting there and thinking, so why have we come to this place? And they don't realize that, oh, this is a different kind of school, for instance,
mm,
or this is church,
mm,
or this is a
mm,
social gathering,
mm,
they're going to have, you know, we call it a party. They're going to, kick off and say, let's go home. I don't like this place.
mm,
So we see the behavior, but what's going on underneath the behavior? What's happening for them,
mm,
considering all the challenges they have with with social communication and interaction. And I think we're nearly done. Okay, so just a few general pointers. Be flexible, offer choices. So we tend to do it like this in school. Do you want an apple or an orange? Okay. Do you want a green pencil or a red pencil? Because usually with these conditions, there's that what's the word I'm looking for now? There's that rigidity of wanting to be in control.
mm-hmm.
Because sometimes it comes along with ODG as well,
Okay.
or position to define disorder, being wanting to be in control. So
Mm.
if you give them that feeling of, oh, I'm making a choice, I'm
Choice.
not being directed,
Yes.
then they will make a choice.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas they don't understand that you're actually, still giving them the direction, but
Just
we choose
including them in the
just
process.
including them,
Yeah.
making them feel that, okay, I can choose what I
What I
want.
want. Yeah.
Okay, so do you want to go for a walk, or do you want to play with your Lego? So usually when we do that, we reward times as well. When they've done their work, they usually get a chance to choose something as a reward. So for the reward, do you want Lego or you want cars?
Mm,
So they have an option.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They have an option and they can choose. And, being flexible enough to, to decide, what, you don't want Lego or you want to go out on the playground. Sometimes we will be able to give them that opportunity, like, what, yes, we'll go to the playground. You need to understand the child so that you can read how they're feeling. And usually you'll be able to sense once they start getting upset, and before you, so you can stop a meltdown before it starts.
Okay.
Yeah. So don't get into a power struggle. I say you must do it. You start raising your voice, you are just increasing their sensory overload. So it's being knowing the child well enough, and then being able to pass across to them so that they can understand when you're being firm. They can understand when you're being firm without raising your voice. So don't get into a power struggle. Sometimes you would have to backpedal. Sometimes you can insist. You just have to get to know the child to see when you can push and to see when you would have to, actually
Step back.
step back and, let it slide and then come back to it. Many times, especially when you've put the structure in place, many times you can insist, because of course, as a child, as a human being, they want to, dodge the difficult things
Mm-hmm.
and do the
Mm-hmm.
easy things.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why we use first and next. That's why we use the schedules. They'll keep pointing to the whatever it is they like. Oh, train or Lego. No, it's work, then choosing. That we're teaching the structure, work, then choosing. But that's, of course, you understand the child. This child, this one today, you're not tired. You're just trying to play me. No, we're not doing that. And usually we would say to parents, because they find it difficult to sleep
Okay.
because of the way their minds work. Some of them don't sleep well. So if parents say to us at the door, they didn't sleep well last night, we would work around the structure with greater flexibility, because when they're tired, there's more likelihood that there will be a meltdown.
Down.
Hmm. So calming activities and routines. Lots of schools and nurseries now have what we call a sensory room with
Oh yes.
nice
Yes.
lights and all of those
Mm-hmm.
things that can help
Music,
them calm down.
relaxation.
Music,
Mm.
relaxation, uh, anything that can help
Just
them.
create the ambience.
Yep, absolutely create the ambience, help them refocus and find themselves back. Routines, routines. They're just, you see, routines is good for everybody.
Yes, so
It's good for everybody. Okay, we use their interests, we use all the things they like, and we use that to encourage them. If they are upset, please stop talking. The more you talk, the more upset they get because they don't understand you. So reduce your words to bare minimum. Use non-verbal means if possible,
okay.
and use gestures, use pictures. Sometimes just writing it down for the older ones who can read, writing it down instead of the words. Because when we speak, they're trying to make sense of what we're saying and
Mm-hmm.
they're already upset. So
Mm-hmm.
you can imagine, just adding to fueling the fire basically. So we need to teach the social routines. We need to teach them the skills. They need to say please and thank you, sharing, taking turns, because that's another big one. They can be, they can find it really difficult to share. So we play turn taking games. We play social skills games, and sometimes we start with one friend, and then we introduce another friend, so they're getting used to having more people within the circle. I mean, we can have great meltdowns on the playground because
Wow.
of a game that hasn't gone right,
Okay.
or because somebody's changed the rules.
Mm.
because they're a stickler for rules. They are your class policeman. If this is the rule, nobody can
Can
bend it.
change it.
So all of those things, it's just being aware
Mm.
and being able to, quite calmly. There's nothing like a calm adult. And if you're upset, if you're out of sorts, they will pick it up. They will instinctively pick it up, and they will get unsettled. I guess because they're quite sensitive, especially if they know you well. So sometimes they would say to you, "Are you tired?" Or they say, "Are you sad?"
Mm.
Because they can kind of feel, and so you can imagine if you don't like them, they can feel it.
Mm.
They can feel it, and they probably won't behave for you. So I find them quite fascinating, learners with ASC. So yeah, that's I think we've done justice. I think what's left is oh, okay. I liked this, so I thought I'd add it. So equality, we all have shoes. Diversity, each person has a different type of shoe. Okay. Equity, everyone getting a pair of shoes that fits. Just think as you're looking at that, think about the person on the spectrum. Acceptance, understanding that we all wear different kinds of shoes. We're all different. Belonging, wearing the shoes you want without fear of judgment, being who you are
Mm.
without, anybody judging you. Neurodivergence is choosing not to wear shoes. Okay, because I'm avoiding discomfort. And it just reminds me of a child I had. I don't know what it was. He had some sensory difficulties with his feet. And he used to say to me, "My feet are burning, my feet are burning."
Oh.
So I basically just let him walk around, sometimes in his socks,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes without socks. Because what was the use of insisting he kept his shoes
If
on
it was uncomfortable.
if he was uncomfortable? So it's making those adjustments and letting things slide. Some children, they will end up wearing sandals to school because they can't cope with the shoes.
Mm.
So it's the adults around being able to make the necessary adjustments, and
Adjustments.
parents being there. If you have a child on the spectrum, please work with the school, and please let them know if there are issues, if adjustments need to be made. Go and sit down and have a discussion about it, so that the child will be happy to go to school. There's nothing more difficult than the child now tuning off school. How are you going to cope with a child who is refusing to go to school? So please, let's be aware of what their needs are and communicate with school.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay. Excellent.
Right. I think what's left is my favorite bit, famous people that have ASC and they've done really well. Susan Boyd won the voice. Was it the
Mm.
voice or the
It's no
or
voice.
this
Is it that Britain has got
British
talent
Got
or something?
Talent?
Yeah, one of those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the famous person. She's called ASC.
Mm.
Um, Tim Burton is a film director. He's a famous director. Um, I found the Tony De Blois very interesting. He's a blind pianist, and he plays 20 instruments.
Whoa.
Can you
I'm not
imagine that?
blind. I don't have
Mm.
autism. I can't
I,
play a note.
don't be reminding me because I was one that paid for my
I
children to start
cannot.
learning, and
Yes.
and I'm still sitting there. I can't play any. Uh,
Wow.
so at Temple Gradin, she's a professor, and she's super brilliant, but she's autistic as well. Elon Musk,
Oh, really?
apparently, yeah,
Apparently.
yeah,
Wow.
Asperger's. I think he's
The
high.
richest person in the world, I guess.
Yeah,
I'm told.
yeah, and Stephen
Stephen.
Wiltshire. Yeah,
Wow.
this one's got an uncanny talent. He just, and that's the interesting thing about ASC. This sort of this category, those ones that are really good with art, they only need to see something once. There's this one famous one that, he was in a plane and he saw the landscape and he got off the plane and it was perfect to a T. He remembered every detail. So yeah, so we've got lots of giftings
Wow.
with the ASC. So very interesting. It is
That's good.
said that
Mm.
these people, I mean, there was no diagnosis in
Newton.
their times,
Interesting.
yes, but from people analyzing their quirks and all of that,
Mm. They could pick up
it's
the
been
symptoms.
concluded, yeah, that
Yeah.
that these
Interesting.
people were on the
Next
spectrum
time
as
I'm
well.
listening to a Mozart, I
And
wouldn't
you
laugh.
just imagine the brilliance in that.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Well,
So amazing, amazing, amazing.
yeah.
Yeah,
See, we got through it.
they got through it.
Excellent. Well, I do have loads of questions. Notice I didn't
You didn't
I
stop
wanted
me.
I wanted to see whether we could just do it in one go.
Hmm.
I don't know, maybe you and I could have a comeback time
Yeah,
where we just talk. I know we still have one more topic to look
yeah.
at, so I'm going to leave it until we've treated that one more topic,
Okay,
and then we can just have like a hangout and we
okay.
can
And
just
do a
generally,
generally.
yeah, just do a general conversation because, especially in autism,
Hmm.
I told you I was excited and really interested because I remember my young lady she actually took a year out to volunteer with children with autism.
Oh wow.
Yeah, because she actually thought she wanted to go into that area with children
Hmm.
at one point. So in her gap year, that was part of what she did for a whole year in an autism school. Um, but then having said that, yeah, I've come into all sort of families, relationship and things like that,
Hmm.
with people having that. So yeah, please, when we finish the next one,
Okay. Well,
we
so we'll
can,
have a
yeah,
general.
please,
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
we can just hang out with all the parents. Um, if anybody has questions as well, they can bring
Hmm.
it.
Hmm. Yeah.
The last
Yeah.
one you did with dyslexia, somebody left a note, a comment. They went back there. They were thanking you for treating the topic and the things that. So obviously, we are all trying to create an awareness here,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
it's going to take time because it's uncharted territories for a lot
It
of
is.
people.
It is.
And it's still the issue of removing the ethnicity stigma that comes with a lot of these things.
Hmm.
And I don't know whether you've
Absolutely.
ever watched this film. My Name is Khan. You haven't?
No.
Oh, I would recommend it. You would love it. And it's about a man that had autism and he was on the high end of the
Hmm.
spectrum. And then he went to America and he got married. So it's quite, you would love the film. I mean, everybody we've recommended it to, My Name is Khan. So yeah, definitely. So please, if you can help me look at your um, very busy schedule, and we can put that in
Hmm.
somewhere when we finish the next one,
Yeah.
where we can just hang about and just talk about all these different topics, and
Absolutely.
how you
Yeah.
can help, remove that stigma that
Hmm.
comes with
Hmm.
all of them.
I know.
um and I'm going to say the same thing we said in dyslexia, and I think it's the same thing whether your child has autism, dyslexia, ADHD, or whatever it is your children have. Sis, I still believe that we need to be attentive parents.
Oh yes.
We
Oh
need to
yes.
be attentive parents. We cannot help any child with any learning difficulties or no learning difficulties if we are
If we're
not
not there.
attentive
Hmm.
parents.
Absolutely. Attentive adults, attentive parents.
We
If you
need to
have
be, yeah.
a child under your wings, you just need to
Something,
be.
sometimes I don't even think they need to be under your wings. I think that if and the reason I'm saying under your wings, quote unquote, is
mm,
sometimes some people think I'm legally responsible. No,
mm,
if I'm in a church environment, I'm in a regular place where I normally go and there
mm.
is a child or a person,
Absolutely. That's
you
what I
know,
mean by
oh,
under
okay,
your
yeah,
wings.
yeah,
Every child around you
you exactly,
is
that due diligence to just observe. And to
mm,
be honest with you, as somebody that teaches young children on Saturdays, every Saturday, I'm coming to, there are things I've observed in some children, but I've just personally just made up my mind I'm going to be patient with everybody. Because especially if the parents have not come back to me and said, oh, this child is this or that child is that.
mm.
But sometimes there are some children that have taught and have just deduced that obviously there's some learning
Yeah.
challenges.
Mm,
Um,
mm,
we've seen this earlier, is
yeah.
being treated and attended to, that we just need to be more
Very true.
patient
Very
and
true.
accommodating, because again I couldn't personally approach the parents because they never said anything to me, and I don't even know
Mm,
whether they've observed what I have observed.
mm,
But I've
mm,
just made up my mind that, like you said, and I think you said in one of the things that you said, that every child is different, every child is unique, and just being patient and understanding and not coming to conclusion. And the speed at which we all learn things are always different.
mm.
So that's my philosophy, meeting everybody where they are,
Yes. Yes.
not being
Yes.
judgmental.
Yeah, and I think the reason people don't talk about these things is number one, there's denial, like,
Yeah. Last week
oh,
somebody
this
said
this
that.
is this is not happening to me,
Mm, mm,
like one woman said to me years ago, oh, there's no ASD in somewhere from East Africa where she came
mm,
from, and I was
mm-hmm,
just like, this child has a diagnosis. Let's work
mm,
to, they didn't accept the diagnosis, so it affected the child getting an education healthcare plan. It affected
wow.
him getting into a specialist. I was running a specialist department then for children with ASD. So it's the stigma.
Mm,
It's a stigma, and there are people. I've sat with parents that that have cried, like,
mm,
and they're saying, "Oh, why did God punish me like this? Or what have I done?"
wow,
What?
wow,
Yeah, it's heartrending.
wow,
It's heartrending.
wow.
And the lady sat there and she said, "I can't go to church. I can't go anywhere. People just look at us, and people just, and we make
Again, I
it
think it's education.
we make it really hard for people that have those children, because we ostracize them and we treat them like, they have done something wrong. And I remember Jesus saying, when they said, who sinned, the father
Yeah,
or the
he
mother, he
said
said, no,
nobody, nobody.
nobody, that the name of God
God
might
be
be glorified.
glorified. That's right. That's right.
So it's us being the community around those people,
Mm-hmm.
those parents and their children,
Mm, mm.
and
I think,
supporting them.
the Bible say judgment will begin in the house of God. But I flip that around and I say change always happen and starts with me.
Mm,
So instead of me looking for outside to change, the change starts with me.
mm,
So
mm.
how am I looking at that thing? How am I perceiving that thing? How am I
Mm,
relating with that thing or that person or
mm.
that situation? I hope
It
you understand what I'm
is.
saying.
I do.
So
I do.
instead of saying, oh, the environment is not this, the people is not this. Okay, you personally, what are you doing concerning that person, that situation, that environment? Like you said, there was a young man, his shoes was burning his feet. I mean, to him it's burning his feet, and that's one of the things my daughter said to us one day. Well, not me specifically, but collective parenting. She said, you can't tell me how I feel.
Absolutely.
You can't tell me how I feel. And it's a fundamental truth. Nobody can tell somebody how they feel. They can tell you how they're feeling, but you can't tell how they're feeling because you are not them.
Mm,
You're not them. So
mm,
again, that sensitivity, that understanding, reorientation, again, biblical
mm,
scripture, be transformed by the
mm,
renewing of your mind.
Yeah.
Be transformed, be willing to learn, be willing to go to uncharted territories, learn new
Yes.
things, be more accommodative. You know, there's something in the book of Thessalonica. It said, be patient with all mankind.
Mm,
Be
mm.
patient with
And
all.
be love. God is love.
Be patient. Be patient. You know, you gave a classic example of that young lady in the trolley. You know, that was the best place for her. There's nothing on her face to say, I've got autism. She looks perfectly, but the person that is looking after her knows what's best for her. So
Mm.
it's just we getting out of that fixed mind, fixation of what we think the
You know,
norm
they
is.
should do this, they could do that.
Yeah,
They, you know,
yeah. Approach
should,
open-mindedness,
mm,
open-mindedness. Meet everybody where they are, love people for who they are, accept them for who they are, and you know, try and be a better person. You know, reach out wanting to help, make a change, bring happiness, smile. I don't know, am I
yeah.
advocating for something else?
Yeah, no, I mean it's a truth. I mean, I have a sister that I talk to all of the time, and she's constantly saying to me, we've got to do some more, because having gone through, children just, children with needs and all of that, and how the church approaches, how the community approaches those kind of things, and
Mm,
it's not just the African, it's the ethnic minority
mm,
over here. Yeah, the
mm,
African community, we're quick to judge.
mm.
The way some people look, we look at some children and we think, hey, it's they are suffering from the sin of their parents or their
Can you
grandparents. Who
imagine?
are you to judge?
Can you
Like,
imagine?
what?
What sin of what parents? Like you, they
Their,
get
their,
the.
their but for the grace of God goes I is
Yes,
what we should all
yes,
be saying.
yes, yes.
And, supporting those people. You don't know how frustrating and how tiring it can be for parents.
I'm
And if you
very
do,
demanding.
they're very demanding. Some parents just spend a lot of time crying and
Mm,
being lonely.
mm.
It's demanding. They need support.
They do. And I think that's why social services, you guys give them respite every so
Mm,
often to the
mm,
parents, you know, if they're
mm.
a carer or something, give them a break, somebody
Yeah,
else taking over from them for a little
yeah,
while, so they too can have some adult conversation or just a me time and, all those kind of thing. Yeah, I think
yeah,
it's definitely a conversation that's worth having, sis.
yeah.
You know,
You don't know how it feels. You want to go somewhere and you can't take your child. You have to find someone to come
mm,
and look after
mm,
them.
mm.
That's not easy.
See, one thing I've always said about parenting, and I think every one of us felt this, especially when we were first parents, was that when anything happens to our child or our child is going through something they can't explain, especially me, I start crying.
Yes.
I remember my first child, when sickness came along, and I see this baby that can't express him or
Mm,
herself in this very critical situation, and the baby can't tell me what's wrong with him or her, and you just see the baby just going limp in your
mm,
hand and just kind of just disappearing. What am I going to do? I'm going to melt down. I'm going to cry.
mm,
And I actually melted down in one hospital. I, I just walked into a consultation room and I just dumped the baby on them. Because literally I felt that I've got a baby in my hand and been sitting here for God knows how long.
mm,
And life just seems to be sipping out of this baby I'm
mm,
holding. With every throw up, life just seems to be disappearing. I just walked into a consultation room and and it's almost like madness. Some people probably say I've gone mad in that moment or something, but that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that when you are in that situation, for me, it was just a one day. You understand? And
mm,
look at the way I
mm.
behave.
Yeah.
Imagine being a lifetime.
All the time, every time.
Imagine being a lifetime. What does that feel like? And I didn't have any stigma. I didn't have anybody pointing a finger or saying something. Do you understand what I'm saying? But now this is a lifetime for somebody else. So is we actually being compassionate? Is we understanding that, like you said, what did you show us? Diversity, equality, equity, all those things, they're crucial. They're crucial. The question is, do we understand it? Do we know what it means? Do we know what it means? Sis. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very, 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 very much. We're so grateful for your time. And I'm glad that we did this, because that means we can do the next one and the one after as well,
Yes.
by God's grace. Thank you. I know
You're
you've had a
welcome.
long day.
Yeah.
Everybody, Sister
Thank you,
Falakemi in the
everybody.
house again. Have a wonderful evening, and you
Thank
and I
you.
will catch up as
We
always.
will. We
Enjoy
will.
the rest of
God
your evening.
bless.
You too. Take
Bye.
care. See you. Everybody, that is Sister Folakemi, as you all know her so well by now. Thank you for your time. I didn't want it to be split. Please forgive me. I just thought, we've had other people that have stayed here longer than the 1 hour just to do things, but we're so blessed for this kind of resources. So as always, everybody, I'm very grateful. We've got exactly in a couple of hours time, just like in less than 1 hour's time, we've got exactly 7 days to our 6th anniversary. So this time next week we'll be entering into our anniversary, so shortly or so soon, or however we want to say it. So I want to say thank you for your patience and your understanding and allowing us to come to the end of this. Please, the resources are there. Make it available to as many people as you can, please. Let us help remove this stigma. Every child is special. Every child is unique. Every child is important. And we need to be open-minded. We need to love. We need to be non-judgmental. We need to be accepting. And that starts with me. I'm not pointing a finger at anybody. I'm pointing at myself. And I'm saying, let's do it together. So for everybody that is there and you guys that are going to watch later on as well, I'm saying thank you. God bless you. So what is the plan for the anniversary? Are you talking about the outing, Auntie Cecilia? If you're talking about the outing, you and I can talk about that. But if it's about what we're actually doing in the live stream next week, I can also give the details for that one as well. So which one are you asking about, so I can answer you? Okay, like I said, everybody, we are so, so, so grateful. Um, Instead, she's telling me good night. I asked a question. I don't know whether she heard me. Okay, I will send her a message then, so I won't keep everybody waiting. So the outing. So if it's the outing, don't worry, we will talk, You and I will talk. We have been discussing some things, so I'll bring those discussion to your attention. So everybody, this is where you and I part for a few hours or a few minutes. God bless you. So I'm going to leave you, as always, in the most capable hands of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Have a wonderful day, morning, or night, wherever you are. Take care. God bless you. And see you soon.
I am blessed of the Lord, his hand is mighty upon me, and no weapon fashioned against me, they shall never prosper. I am blessed of the Lord, his hand is mighty upon me, and no weapon fashioned against me, they shall never prosper. Praying child, godly children be heard. Never defeated, always winning. We're living in fear of God. Praying child, godly children be heard. Never defeated, always winning. We're living in fear of God. Like the holy plan, round about your table. Children are the heritage of God.